uh, this seminar on good maritime governance, and particularly connecting good maritime governance with the development of the blue economy in archipelagic and island states. My name is Steve Fletcher. I work at the Centre for Blue Governance at the University of Portsmouth on the cold, wet south coast of England. And I'm also a member of the UN International Resource Panel, where I lead the ocean work of that organization. I'm also working with the UN Environment Programme right now on looking at options to support countries to transition to a sustainable blue economy. So this seminar and the entire program is extremely timely and extremely interesting to me, and I hope to you as well. So we have a great lineup of speakers today to discuss this topic. I will just introduce them briefly. First up, we have Alexander Khan, who's head of Fisheries undergraduate programs for the Pangandaran campus at the Universitas Pangandaran. I apologize, Alexander, for absolutely getting that disastrously wrong, I imagine. The second speaker is Antonis Stilianou, who's Professor of Law at the University of Nicosia and President of the Board of Directors of the Port Authority of Cyprus. Welcome to you both. And the third speaker is Patricia Kelola, who works at the Human Dignity Group Limited, and who's a fisheries scientist and anti-human trafficking advocate. So we have quite a mixed range of speakers from different backgrounds, all looking to provide their perspective on how good maritime governance can contribute to the transition to the blue economy in AIS locations. I should also say thank you to the AIS Forum Secretariat for putting this event together, and thank you for inviting me to chair it. So the way the session will work, we will have the three presentations first, and if you could hold off and we'll all the questions together towards the end as in the form of an overall discussion. So we'll have the three presentations. We'll then have a couple of videos to give alternative perspectives, and then we'll have the Q&A session, the question and answer session after that. So please do, though, write your questions and answers in the Q&A box. So if you click on Q&A at the bottom of the screen, you should have the opportunity then to write some questions in, and those questions, I'll come back to those questions at the end of the presentations and the video. Okay, without further ado then, please may I invite Alexander to give your presentation, please, on recent trends in global maritime governance frameworks with implications for the blue economy in Indonesia. Thank you, Alexander, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Steve, and hi, and Professor Antonius and Professor Patricia, and thank you very much, AIS Secretariat for invite me into this very distinguished forum. So allow me to share my screen first, and I hope everyone now can see my presentation.
We can see it, Alexander, but could you put it on presentation mode?
Yeah, I'm trying now.
Oh yeah.
Right. Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hopefully, you can see now clearly. Right. Hi everyone. My name is Alexander Khan. I am from Fisheries undergraduate program for Pangandaran Campus, Universitas Pajajaran. I work as a lecturer for the undergraduate fisheries program. So today I will share my thoughts on recent trends in global maritime governance frameworks with implications for the blue economy for Indonesia context. As we may aware that 6 countries in Asia are known as the top fisheries producers in the world. Indonesia, along with China, with the Philippines, with Thailand, and Vietnam, also known as the top fisheries producers in the world. And based on the recent research, 80% of marine pollution came from land activity. So the major economic losses also came from the marine activities. And according to the World Bank, from their report in 2016, overfishing, habitat degradations, climate change related phenomena, unfair trade, and ad hoc developments contribute to the marine and fisheries activity. And realize with the current situation in 2012, the Changwon Declaration provide the definition of blue economy. Let me bring you to the definition of the from the many definition of the blue economy. Uh, from the Partnership in Environment Management for the Seas of the East Asia, or the PEMC, the definition of the blue economy related to the sustainable ocean-based economic model that employs environmental sounds, innovative infrastructure, technologies, and practices, including institutional and financing arrangements for meeting the goals. And according to the World Bank, and also according to the FAO, blue economy related to the economic growth, improve livelihood, pro jobs, and ocean ecosystem health. If we want to make more, not trying to simplify the definitions of the blue economy, I can see there are 3 pillars of the blue economy, which is ecology, economy, and social. So the blue economy related to the ecology, it sounds like all the activities should be ecologically sustainable. In the social aspect, it should be socially equitable, no one left behind, and economically, it sounds like profitable. So it means that the blue economy consists into three main pillars: ecology, social, and economy. According to the McKinley research in 2019, there are 4 components of the blue economy: conservations, innovations, social innovations, and the economy, low carbon economy. And each component has their own activity that might be related to the main components. As we can see from my presentation here, that some activity related to the innovation and integration should be related to energy, transport, fisheries, and social ecological resilience. And from the social aspects, we can see here the components mostly related to the improving of the social capacity and capability on managing the resources. At the same time, it should be economically profitable for some for the people who extract the resources from the oceans. If we can, if we can see the World Bank global frameworks on the blue economy, there are 4 steps or 4 components that related to the blue economy: the activities itself, the ocean services, the industry, and the driver of growth. For example, if we're talking about the activities on extraction non-living resources, the oceans can provide minerals, energy, and the fresh water, and the industries will rise from these ocean services like a seabed mining, oil and gases, renewables energy, and desalination, and it will drive of the growth of the demand for the minerals, the demand for the alternative energy source, and also the demand for fresh water. So this is the framework of the blue economy from the perspective of the World Bank. And according to the World Bank, the blue economy challenges like overfishing, habitat degradations, climate change, unfair trade, and ad hoc development can be overcome with the systematic approach with the integrated coastal zone management, assessing marine resources values and reliable data information. And this is really has significant relevancy to the archipelagic and island states. And also, according to the World Bank, there are long path or long way to the blue economy, which is will be better resources governance to improve blue economy investments, which will beneficially to economic and protect the resources. And also the blue economy should be scientific based approach for resources governance and decision making. At the same time, the blue economy long way or long path of the blue economy should be pro-poor market driven for sustainable and equitable access. At the same time, responsible financial and investment that significantly contribute to the blue economy. So the World Bank has their own framework and also they have their own vision on the blue economy. Besides that, the European Commission or the European Union, uh, they're already stated that they are already in the track for the blue economy for certain sectors like marine living resources, marine non-living resources, marine renewable energy, coastal tourism, port activity. But they're also aware there are emerging sectors of the blue economy that will be appear in the next year coming, like ocean energy, blue economy, and blue biotechnology, saltwater desalination, marine mineral extraction, marine defense, security and surveillance, research and education, infrastructure, and marine works. From the European Commission or European Union, we can see that they have ambition to become the global leader for the what they call it Green Deal of the European Union, like adaptation ambition to increase the climate from 2030 to 2050, supplying clean, affordable, and security energy, and zero pollution ambition for a toxic-free environment, preserving and restoring ecosystem and biodiversity, and also accelerating the shift to sustainable and smart mobility. At the same time, also building and renovating in energy and resource efficient way. This is the European Commission or European uh, Union global framework for the blue economy. If we want to make it more clear, European Commission or European Union, they have their own strategy for the blue economy, or they call it biodiversity strategy, like responsible food production, decarbonization, sustainable food system, and investing in nature. Another platform which is consists of the 14 leader, what we call it high level panel for sustainable ocean economy, and they have their horizon or their perspective on the blue economy for 2020 to 2050, like a mangrove coastal habitat, like conserve and restore mangrove coastal habitat. So they have specific action on the blue for the blue economy, which is maybe they have their own term like sustainable economy, ocean economy, and also on ocean-based renewable energy to scale up the production of offshore energy, and also ocean-based transportation to reduce the emission from the international shipping, or also from the ecosystem or ocean-based sector, ocean-based food production. They have their own specific actions achieve a healthier balanced diet for 9.7 billion people in the world by 2015. And from the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, they have actions and scenario, which is a business as usual scenario or the sustainable transformation pathway scenario. Like for example, action on conserve and restore mangrove. If they choose this scenario on business as usual, the blue carbon ecosystem continue to decline, but at a decreasing rate. But if they choose the sustainable transformation pathway scenario, the mangrove restoration will have two scenarios. a moderate restoration effort covering 40% of the historical ecosystem covered by 2015, and an aggressive scenario of complete restoration of the pre-1980s cover. This is the scenario that has been part of their framework for the blue economy. But what needs to be done for Indonesia? In Indonesia context, sorry, for Indonesia context, Indonesia have their own strategies according to the World Bank. There are four strategies like improve management of marine and coastal assets, mobilize incentive and investments, better system for data collection and monitoring, and build back bluer from the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is the strategy that the World Bank has been reported that Indonesia can choose. Sorry. Current Indonesia Blue Economy Target is according to the National Medium-Term Development Plan, or we call it RPJMN 2020-2024, improve maritime and marine management, realization of the balanced and dynamic maritime-based economic development contribution, and also increase the productivity and quality of the Indonesian government, environment, and waters, and increase production of goods and services and added value of natural resources, increase a community welfare, increase productivity of invention and innovation for strengthen competitive and sustainable economic transformation. As we can see here from my presentation, that Indonesia has many targets for the blue economy, and this target has been contributed to Indonesia a framework for the blue economy. So the strategy for blue economy in Indonesia from each institution, like from the government, central government, and the ministry or the ministries related to the blue economy, like increase the utilization of marine ecosystem, increase the productivity and quality of the Indonesian environment and waters, increase productivity of interventions and innovation for strengthen competitive and sustainable economic transformation. So there are many strategies from Indonesia for the blue economy for 2020 and 2024. So what has been done to date related to blue economy in Indonesia? For example, in the Indonesia framework, Coastal and Small Island Management Act has been released in 2014 to the amendment of the law for the coastal area and the small island. And also Indonesia developed a regulation about the Sea Act according to the Indonesia Act number 32 in 2014. And also developed the two blue economy zones in Nusa Penida in Bali and East Lombok. So according to the recent research, there are two locations has been related to the blue economy, and this is what we call it the blue economy zone development. So what has been done to related to the blue economy in Indonesia? From the 2015 to 2019, marine policy in Indonesia related to blue economy related to the five main sectors like energy security, maritime sovereignty and culture, food and environmental sovereignty, tourism and infrastructure and connectivity. So the regulation has been released to date related to the blue economy in Indonesia, and some of the regulation also ongoing. So some already been released, like law on fisheries, law on continental shelf, law on management and coastal areas, and presidential regulations on national strategic area zoning plans and interregional zone plans, and also presidential regulation on the national action plan to reduce illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. So those policy, which is ongoing and already been released by the Indonesian government, is also related closely to the blue economy. Conclusion, as we may aware that there are a lot of targets and strategies for the blue economy amongst the institutional agency here in Indonesia or also internationally, like from the World Bank, from the High Panel on Blue Oceans frameworks and also from other agencies. So my conclusion is about adaptive targets and strategies from global frameworks into national frameworks. Number two, better harmonization in blue economy targets and strategies among concerned organizations. As we can see before that Indonesia has each institution with each targets and strategy for the blue economy. So we need better harmonization to achieve the blue economy targets and strategy. And number three, continuing international fair collaboration between developing countries to implement blue economy strategies in local and national level. Thank you very much.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Alexander. It's extremely challenging to bring together the whole practice literature on sustainable blue economy and blue economy, and you did that brilliantly. So congratulations. And I think it's a real challenge, isn't it? Because we have these global frameworks or regional frameworks, and they kind of make it seem so easy. But in reality, each country is different with different challenges and different opportunities. And somehow you have to combine the framework with the specifics of a location or a country, and it's really not easy. So I've got a whole list of questions for you later, Alexander. You'll be glad to know.
Thank you, Professor.
Right, but thank you so much. We'll no worries. We'll move on. But could I just ask that for all participants, just to remember that you can note down your questions by using the Q&A box. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen on the right. If you click on that, then type in your question, and then we can see the list of questions. I will ask them to the speakers at our discussion session a bit later on. So please do put your questions there. So next up, we have Antonis. Antonis is a professor of law at the University of Nicosia, and as I said before, president of the board of directors of the Port Authority of Cyprus. So Antonis, over to you, please. Thank you.
Well, dear Steve, dear colleagues, I hope you can hear me well. Yep. I'll be sharing my screen. Perfect. I'll be sharing my screen as well. It's a real honor that we have been invited to discuss that kind of important issues relevant to the blue economy. And I will be talking mainly about good governance, which is quite a very important topic. And let me... So we're talking about governance and port management services for the development of key sectors in the blue economy. Obviously, we'll be talking about the limitations of good governance, of good maritime governance, the aspirations we have, and the goals that need to be achieved in relation to port management and blue economy. And I will start with these slides, which asks us in order to consider this image before saying, don't reinvent the wheel. And I hope that that will make sense towards the end of the presentation. Because if we start with on the premise that we don't have...
Antonis, can I just interrupt slightly? We can see your screen, but it's not on the presentation mode, so it's quite small. It's got all of the stuff around it. So would you mind just popping it onto presentation mode if you can?
Yes, I think I did that. Yeah. Let me do it again. It's better now.
If you could then put it on the presentation. Oh yeah, slideshow. Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's not on slideshow mode for me, but maybe can somebody else say if they can see it properly or not?
It is on the slide show presentation for me. Or I don't know what.
Okay, maybe it's just a delay, Antonis. You carry on. Maybe
okay,
it's
well,
just delayed.
okay. So we need to not reinvent the wheel. We need to actually make our way towards inventing new things in relation to good governance, good maritime governance for the purpose of blue economy. So ports are more than just an infrastructure, essentially. Ports are the connecting nodes for socio-economic value, and they also are an important parameter in relation to the development of blue economy. Ports represent and face and deal with key issues of sustainability. It has been also mentioned earlier by Alexander that in the European Union, we have a very important framework in relation to the European Green Agenda. And this has been connected to also promoting issues of blue economy, especially since the Rio Declaration. So ports are and constitute a focal point for sustainable development issues. Blue economy obviously is a fast developing concept around the world, and it's relevant to all coastal states, and more importantly, more relevant to archipelagic and island states like Cyprus, for example. So turning to the issue of good maritime governance, and that might sound theoretical, but it has a practical aspiration as well. Firstly, we need to examine the role of oceans and their value in relation to the socio-economic cultures of archipelagic and islandic states. And the presentation concentrates around the theory that we need to move away from a form towards processes, towards putting in place and implementing very specific processes. There are systematic failures in the governance of the maritime sector, and this can be evidenced in a good range of issues that are relevant to our discussion. And also we need to take into account issues of environmental security, safety, and the economy. And things definitely are not perhaps as satisfactory as might be thought. And that relates to issues of the international law being a state-centric system, which concentrates on the notion or is based on what we call in international law a Westphalian system of international law deriving from the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. And in today's globalized world, we need to move away from that state-centric notion of the Westphalian system towards a multimodal system in order to cooperate, in order to be more sustainable, in order to achieve the sustainable development goals, in order to reduce carbon dioxide, in order to provide for the marine environment protection, and so on.
Antonis, can
Yes.
I interrupt one more time? I'm really sorry. I think for the rest of us, we still aren't seeing your slides move on. At least I'm not, and I think the Secretariat is not also. Is there a way you could just move between your slides differently somehow? Your slides are not moving on. It seems to have frozen for me, at least. I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe you should click the resume slideshow. Or maybe you can restart and share screen again. Thank you.
So is that better now?
No, not yet. If you could maybe click on the icon at the bottom of the screen, the slideshow icon, that might do it. That's not doing anything for me.
No?
No, no. Is that Livita who was speaking just then? Ah, okay, it's moving now. Whatever you're doing, it's moving forward.
Oh, okay, so we'll adhere to this protocol since now you can at least see the moving slides. So what I'm saying is that we need to take into account a very specific fact. And this specific fact is that there is a substantially changed role of the nation state. I was talking earlier about the Westphalian basis of international law, but there is indeed a substantially changed role of the nation state as a maritime authority and policymaker in today's globalized world, and in line with the concepts such as the United Nations SDGs that are relevant to the industry, issues of blue economy and green agenda. And there is also of relevance an informal economy in the sector, which is closely linked to formal economy. And this is substantive in shipping as much as anywhere. It's not an object, it's a process. And it's not a form, it's actions that we need to take into account. So when we're talking about good maritime governance, we mean flexibility, we need movement, we need change, we need dynamism, we need port state control, and we need effectiveness. And in those respects, we need to apply a new governance framework. There are a lot of legislative documents around, there are a lot of international treaties around. Most importantly, we have the United Conventions, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea of 1982, which deals or incorporates elements of blue economy, even if the concept of the notion of blue economy has arisen much later than the adoption of UNCLOS 3. But in that respect, we need to take into account the effects of globalization and the urgent need for sustainability in the ports and maritime industry. So good governance will include all sectors, liner, barge, ferry, will include also all activities, safety, the environment, security, and efficiency, will be relevant to all locations from the United States to the European Union, from the Far East and China to the developing countries of Africa. And good governance will be also relevant in every part of the jurisdiction and functioning of policymaking and its underlying governance, from the international global to the local and regional, passing on the way through the supranational and national. The reasons for change are obviously numerous. We're moving away, as I said, from the Westphalian perception of international law. We need to include stakeholders' actions. We need to put them into the equation. That will include the shipping industry, that will include local communities, that will include governmental agencies, and so on, and so on. And we need to take into account the fact that shipping is intensely a globalized sector. So again, we're not looking into the individual nation state, but we need to look at the bigger picture. So maritime governance should be designed and take form, not statically, but it has to be a dynamic concept which focuses on process instead of form. So the overarching concepts and our actions and our philosophy, it's three simple things. We need to think again, we need to think ahead, we need to think across all relevant sectors, across green agendas, across blue economies, and formulate our strategy and policy in those respects. As regards port management and its relation with blue economy, we need to take into account the fact that the oceans and subsequently the ports represent a significant jurisdictional area and a source of opportunity, especially when it comes down to growing the blue economy. We also need to put in place an integrated coastal and port zone management, which will seek to coordinate the application of different policies affecting the coastal states and port zones. And we also need to invest in change so as to grow the blue economy. In Europe, for example, we're placing a lot of emphasis on blue economy. Blue economy represents roughly 5.4 million jobs and generates a gross added value of almost 500 billion euros a year. So we place a lot of emphasis on blue economy in the European Union. There are institutional dynamics in blue governance. There are the coastal communities in blue governance where we have to empower stakeholders and the local communities to experience the continuing, changing and emerging relationships to the ports and the seas. And we need to place an emphasis on service economy as a development strategy for coastal communities. And the third parameter, a very important pillar, is the democratic participation in blue governance. Blue economy has a connection or a connectivity with democracy in most respects. So we need to design and evaluate the participatory methodologies we follow. We need to place a lot of emphasis on research and development, and we need to implement tools and strategies to support the inclusion of stakeholders in policy-making and decision-making processes, from knowledge building to implementation. So the Cyprus Ports Authority envisions in the promotion of institutional dynamics in blue governance in accordance with the good governance and best practices that I have outlined above, the involvement of coastal communities in blue governance and democratic participation in blue governance. Oceans, the seas and ports need to be seen as development spaces and need to be seen as part of the development processes that will contribute towards attaining the goals or visions of blue economy, sustainability, and so on. So, in order to wrap up the discussion we're having, we need to put in place public and private processes. So there is also a lot of space for the interconnection of the link between the public sectors and the private sectors, the enterprises and the government authorities, agencies, and so on. And putting a process in those respects, that process has to be inclusive, has to be a well-informed, precautionary and adaptive, has to be accountable and transparent, has to be holistic across various sectors, and has to have a long-term vision, and has to be innovative and proactive. So there has to be, in essence, what we call a socio-ecological coordination through ports management. And ports indeed have the opportunity to become the physical interface where all the blue economy verticals can converge. And that brings us to the final slide, which was actually the original slide, which is the question whether we need to actually reinvent the wheel. And there is a saying that says, do not reinvent the wheel. The wheel has been invented and has been discovered earlier. But as you can see from those slides, and Cyprus or Greece being an archipelagic state, they have a long history or a lot of ancient history. And we see the stone wheel, we see the wooden wheel, We see the wind with the various razors. We see when the introduction of tires and how today's wheel has been reinvented in order to be more sufficient, in order to be more productive, in order to fulfill all of its purposes. And in that sense, again, when we're talking about blue economy, when we're talking about sustainability, we do have to reinvent the wheel. We do have to put in place more innovative processes in order to reach the goals and fulfill our visions for the purposes of the blue economy. So that would be all for this part. So thank you very much for listening.
Antonis, thank you very much. That was fabulous. And your technical problems did not affect the message that you presented. So thank you so much for that. I was just reflecting when you were speaking, actually, that policy integration is so central to this challenge, isn't it, around how we can apply good maritime governance to the sustainable blue economy. And that policy integration is kind of the continual challenge. And I like your not reinventing the wheel, but just kind of making the wheel better idea. That makes perfect sense. It's a great analogy for that situation. I've got lots of questions for you as well. We can come back to those later, but thank you so much for your presentation. Okay, so our final presentation, or face-to-face presentation, so to speak, is from Patricia Kalola. Sorry. Patricia's going to be talking about the role of maritime governance in providing a fair deal to blue economy offshore fisheries workers of small island states, a critical issue. So Patricia, over to you, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fletcher, and thank you very much to the two previous speakers. A lot of work has gone into your presentations, and you're extremely informed on your work, so that was lovely to hear. I'm going to take you to another part of the world now, actually nearer to Indonesia, and I only have a few slides. Better governance in the offshore tuna fisheries is the way to achieve fair dealing for workers. While I appreciate the small island states occur globally, my experience pertains only to the Pacific, and in that mainly to Fiji. So if I can have the first two slides, please, the two after this. So this is the order in which I'm going to talk. No one would ever know. More bad news. Someone must be in charge. There must be rules. Ambassador Ogreseno's balloons. Why is this so, and what can be done? And the second slide, please. Shows us one of the subject matters, not the man with his red shorts, but the yellowfin tuna, and this also was taken from Manado. Very heavy fish, maybe 60 kilos, so it's worth a lot of money. Thank you. So no one would ever know. To me, the turning point from being an ordinary fishery scientist came in 2011, when I read the story of Abel Seaman. Abel Seaman was a real person, but they gave him a fictitious name. He talked about his and others' work as crew on distant water nation vessels in the Pacific tuna fishery. And here is some of what he wrote. While being employed by this foreign fishing vessel and fishing in our Pacific waters, I feel that I'm actually fishing in foreign waters, not my own waters. This is because foreigners are labouring Pacific Islander crews almost to slavery in their own backyard. Our politicians boast that it raises our local economy by providing employment to local Pacific Islanders. But which of them has had the initiative to check on the environment in which we work? the treatment and salary of our countrymen who risk their lives for so little money to be able to feed their families and loved ones back home. We work in a situation where one lives under strict orders, and should the orders be disobeyed or hindered, the penalties are harsh. Anything can happen to us out here, and nobody will be able to tell what really happened. He's correct. Over the past few years, while at my desk, casually, I've compiled a spreadsheet of dead and missing in the fishery, which now contains 103 entries, a very small snapshot of happenings out here, where here is an area comprising 20% of the Earth's surface, its ocean being utilised just in the tuna fishery alone by almost 3,500 licensed vessels on the Commission's vessel register. That nobody will be able to tell what really happened is also true, because the happenings happen mostly at sea. So that was the first point, and more bad news. Ian Obina's outlaw ocean surely exists in the Pacific Convention area, although it is uncertain whether abuses here are at the level of his discoveries. Nevertheless, in 5 or 6 years of part-time inquiry, I've been told many first-hand stories by deckhands and others of injuries and deaths, such as a man with huge scars on his back from being savaged by the captain's dog, of men being beaten by the captain and later dying, of men drunk from lack of sleep, one of them falling into the fish hold and breaking his arm and made to continue working, and another mistakenly standing on the main line during hauling and subsequently being dragged overboard and drowned when the line wrapped around his ankles, of men made to jump overboard in the night and untangle the main line from the propeller while the sharks were feasting on the caught tuna nearby, one of the men later dying, of a captain forcing men to fight to the death and then killing the winner, of men transshipping tuna on a flimsy wooden raft as sharks circled them, or being themselves transshipped by having to swim. And I've met a man with no fingers because of frostbite caused by being made to work an hour in the minus 30 degrees fish hold without proper protective equipment. And accidents, losing an eye from a marlin spear, of men washed overboard in rough weather, ignored, of deaths from septicemia caused by either accidents from fish hooks or beatings. Who are these crewmen? They are men looking for a job, provide for themselves and their family. Young men picked off the street. Young men who left in primary or early secondary school targeted by recruiters, and often men who believe they're not worth anything. If they knew how essential they really are. Many Pacific Island fisheries are based on longliners, and longliners roam much of the convention area except for the western portion, which is dominated by purse seine fishing. The longline fishing industry relies on low-level crew to feed out and bait the line, haul it in, take off the fish, gut and clean them, stack them, and at the end of the voyage, to offload them. Working conditions for lower level crew on fishing vessels are poor, smacking of forced labour, slavery and even trafficking. Often no work contracts, very low wages, no payment for overtime, which is often half of the day's work, no medical checks, no accident insurance, no seafaring certificates, which is an IMO requirement, no checking of documents, working up to 18 or 20 hours a day, usually poor food in seawater and sometimes limited drinking water. So this is a scenario of the horrible things that happen on fishing vessels. So the next section is called someone must be in charge. There must be rules. Well, it is the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission, and here's a map of the convention area. So all of this is by the Central Pacific Fisheries Commission, which was established in 2004. It has 27 members. Can I have the next slide, please? 7 participating territories and 9 cooperating non-members. And the commission works by consensus. So if one member doesn't agree to a motion, the whole motion collapses. Associated to the commission, but independent, or the Secretary of the Pacific Community, which does stock assessment, the Pacific Islands Forum Fisheries Agency, which does licensing, the parties to the Nauru Agreement, which is a consortium of 8 countries to the west of the convention area, and the Tavaka Moana Arrangement, which is a group of countries to the east. There is no doubt that the Commission, the PNA and the Tavaka Moana support the blue economy because they aspire to the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth and ocean ecosystem health. Marine fisheries contribute more than US $240 billion annually to global domestic product. And of that, 240 billion, the Pacific tuna fishery contributes up to 1/3. So it's a very significant fishery. To ensure the fishing entities in the Pacific Convention area do not overharvest the tuna resource, nor upset the health of the ocean ecosystem, the Commission does make rules, such as against IUU fishing, on transshipping, and whale sharks and other sharks. These are just examples. The FFA maintains a vessel of good standing register. So moving on to the next section. In the previous forum, Ambassador Oagraceno had a beautiful drawing of balloons. He showed them drifting across the sky, organisations that are supposed to be managing the fisheries. And then while they drifted along and had their action just continued underneath with no one interrupting it. So I thought it was delightful. So here in the Pacific, the biggest balloon is fish. The next biggest are the balloons of the International Labour Organization, the International Maritime Organization, the FAO, and the World Trade Organization. The FFA, the Foreign Fisheries Agency, is there also, the PNA and the Tavaka Moana, then members of the Commission. While they are drifting about or jostling for positions, people abuse continues unreported. Outlaw Ocean has remarked that lax rules and a maritime bureaucracy are designed more anonymity and secrecy of ship owners than to enable oversight and accountability of the industry. And World Wildlife Fund recently stated that research into deceptive and coercive labour practices in the fisheries sector is not comprehensive or coordinated, and that there are maritime regulations that could address them, but implementation and enforcement has not been effective. So the next section is called, Why is this so? Hundreds of people attend the Commission's annual meeting for 5 or 6 days. They discuss the state of the resource, vessel numbers, and the ocean environment. This is understandable. Small Pacific Island nations have few resources other than tuna, and foreign fleets wish to harvest the tuna in nations' east, so they pay access fees. Those fees are important to small nations who, of course, don't wish to lose them. And for the companies, their motive is making profit for the least cost. The operation of fishing is very expensive, less so with World Trade Organization subsidies, and any savings that can be made, such as on crew, are worthwhile. As identified above, cost cutting on the crew results in poor working conditions for fishing crew, forced labour, slavery, and even human trafficking. The Commission meetings never discuss vessel crew, even though the vessels can't catch the fish without the crew. There is no in people. Fisheries observers are a good example of this. The observers are deployed by the Commission to monitor tuna catches on vessels and also to make sure that the Commission rules are followed. Single observers placed on vessels are in a dangerous situation because they're like police. And if the captain or someone doesn't like what they're doing, like they're reporting actually what's there, not what the captain wants to be reported, they sometimes go missing. Initially, there's a lot of concern, but it soon fades out. Liz Mitchell from the Association of Professional Observers remarked that observers are like an afterthought, more of a tool than a human being. Since at least 10 years, the Commission has been dithering on whether to insure the observers. At least 10 observers have been lost since 2009. No charges have been laid, often no compensation, and the particular. If observers are more of a tool person, then think how lowly are regarded the crew. Basically, governance of the seas has gone out the window. And I did forget to put into my written story, and I've just remembered, about the vessels' flags of convenience, because there are 5 of the Pacific Island countries that have open access registries, and that encourages IUU fishing. All of this is a matter of money, and that's just how it is. Finally, what can be done? What is being done? So fishing vessels not covered by the UN's Maritime Labour Convention, which has fishing vessels not covered by the MLC, because it has rules for crew, hours of work and sleeping hours and safety. Even some countries have incorporated into their own legislation. They include France and Nigeria and 3. That could be done by Pacific Island states in the convention area. The ILO's Work in Fishing Convention 2007, that's Convention C188, is a type of MLC replacement, is in force, but no Pacific Island nation nor Pacific Island Rim nation has accessed or ratified it. So they're just not. However, South Africa has, and its ratification was well documented by the seizure of the Fu Sheng 11 in June 2018. There were huge fines paid because when they inspected the vessel, there were many things wrong with it, and the South African authorities wouldn't release it until all of those things were fixed up. There's the 1995 FAO Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, but I've no advice on its effectiveness. It's a voluntary code. However, after all of them, the Foreign Fisheries Agency's Monitoring Terms and Conditions, revised 2019, has good potential. The FFA represents the 17 Pacific Island states, and they act on his behalf in issuing licenses. And with the licenses, there are terms of conditions for fishing within the nation's EEZs. Though the monitoring terms and conditions revised 2019 are being used by FFIA to better regulate working conditions on fishing vessels in the region. They're derived from the ILO C188, and they list employment and vessel safety conditions, which vessels must have in place to be able to be registered on the Vessels of Good Standing register, or retain or access a license. This all seems too good to be true. However, the monitoring terms and conditions depend on the country, just their local laws, engaging in discussion and training and sharing information. New Zealand is supporting this initiative, so we'll wait and see how effective it is. International markets are another effective way of improving employment and working conditions of crew. In August 2021, the US Customs and Border Protection placed a withholding release order on the Fiji vessel Hankton 112 on suspicion of forced labour, as it has done for 4 or 5 other fishing vessels or companies. In my view, the market can prove to be a very effective means of bettering crew conditions as long as reporting is carried out. 3 matters that can be done at local levels are: 1, member states subsidising the certification of crew and ensuring that only certified crew are placed on fishing vessels. 2, member states addressing the wages, being guided by the ITF and MLC recommendations. And 3, better licensing and monitoring of recruiting agents, and Indonesia has been working well in that area. A register of accepted agents could be incorporated into the FFA's good standing vessel register. A good idea, eh? A final recommendation is to have time reporting of crew transshipments. So often crew lists are hard to come by and crew are not checked off at ports of entry, which means that there is no record of whether a missing or dead person was on a particular vessel. If crew lists were made and checked and whether crew transshipments were reported well, the whereabouts of individual crew would be known. So after all of that, the last word belongs to Mr. Abel Seaman. And he said, "I kindly ask that our government's appropriate authorities closely monitor the activities of the licensed fishing vessels and whatever circumstances may arise in the fishing grounds. We would rather struggle for the benefit of our own people and our own nations rather than work as slaves to others who treat us like dirt in our own territory." Vinaka Vakalevu, terima kasih banyak.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for that extremely thought-provoking and affecting presentation, at least for me. I think it really serves to kind of provide the opposite end of the spectrum, doesn't it, between the sort of the theoretical aspects of what a blue economy might be and how to transition to it versus the realities of people working at some of the more sort of dangerous and challenging areas within the economy, and to try and understand how that sort of big transition can support people who are at risk in the fisheries sector. So thank you so much for highlighting that really important aspect of this discussion. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment. So I'm just going to say thank you to our 3 speakers, and we'll come back to them in a few minutes for some questions and answers. So can I just again ask everybody watching this to add any questions to the Q&A box if you wish to ask some questions. And now we're just going to watch or see a couple of videos. So I think this will just magically appear on your screens, hopefully. Oh yes, here it comes.
My name is Madeline Sophie. I'm the Deputy Head of Public Relations of Astindo. Astindo is the Indonesian Travel Agents Association, established on November 10, 1999, under the auspices of the Ministry of Transportation, also supported by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia. Astindo members consist of travel agents from all over Indonesia, from small to big agents, which is currently spread in 24 provinces. The number of Astindo members is currently over than 1,000 members, including the top 20 travel agent, which controls nearly 70% of outbound tour and international ticket sales of Indonesia, and the rest are inbound and domestic tour and ticketing agents. The concept of blue economy for us means everything. It's been the main contributor and will still be the future of our business. It's not only about marine tourism, but much more than that. We are the largest archipelago in the world, and we've been enjoying the sweet fruits of it, from the coastal area of the archipelago to the inland community rely their life, direct or indirectly, from the blue economy concept. We tend to neglect the existence of our world, which means our ocean. We take it for granted without giving back what we're supposed to. It's time to contribute and invest more time and energy for the ocean sustainability. Being more nature friendly, being more disciplined with our life habits, and taking part in responsible tourism. Concrete and productive action must be started from the smallest group of the local community, which mostly needs support and guidance from the local or higher authority to establish the similar vision of blue economy development. Unless we collaborate, we will perish. And to position ourselves at the forefront is a simple step as a startup. Thank you.
Good day. My name is Emil Pemberton, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Marine Resources on Nevis. I have been a fisherman since 1978, and I've worked with the Department of Marine Resources from 2001 to 2011, and then again from 2018 to the present. I've seen the sector move from basically no regulations in the 1970s to the Fisheries Act of 1984 and the Fisheries, Aquaculture and Marine Resources Act of 2016. Now, what has been implemented at this time is a 2-mile radius around the islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. This has been declared as a marine management area with different zones dedicated to transportation, conservation, and fishing, for example. Minimum sizes have been implemented for species such as lobster and conch, and also minimum sizes have been implemented for fishing gear such as fish traps and nets. Now, the area that we have where the shelf is widest is in this southeast of the island, in an area we call Indian Castle, and that is shown in the video in the background. And the challenges faced by fishers in this area are that there is no place, no sheltered port, but they have to launch their boats from shore and pull them back up each time. Despite the challenges, we have made some progress in the fisheries sector, and we have been managing up to a point to manage the fisheries sustainably. However, going forward with the whole COVID-19 situation, and with an increased number of persons coming into the fisheries sector, there's a challenge that we have in managing the resources. One of the ways we are trying to manage that is that we are asking fishers to target underutilized species. So far, that is being done, and hopefully we are able to manage our resources for present as well as future generations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to those two video contributors as well. I think that just provides two additional perspectives to the discussion. Okay, so let's open up the meeting now to some questions and answers. So we've had some questions come in through the Q&A chat box, but could I just encourage anybody with any more questions just to add them in, and I'll be sure to ask them to our participants. Okay, so a couple of questions have come in about COVID-19 and the effects of COVID-19 on the transition to a blue economy. Alexander, I noticed that you've replied to one in writing already, but I wonder if you could just tackle that question first. So in your experience, how do you feel the COVID-19 situation is creating a barrier to the transition to a blue economy? And also, can I just turn the question around a bit? Does it also present some opportunities in some way that is not immediately obvious? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Steve. Yeah, based on our previous research, the COVID-19 affects the fishers' efforts, including day of fishing, including number of fish being caught, and also related to price of the fish. So yeah, is will bring the new perspective for the blue economy, because it interfere global humankind activity, right? So I think there will be rearranged on the targets and strategies based on the World Bank suggestion to Indonesia on the blue economy should be implement the bluer, they call it the bluer activities overcome the pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemic. The opportunity of course will be there, because we can see that after the pandemic there will be oversupply, probably oversupply, because the demand has been decreased and the price has been increased at the same time. So it will be a good opportunity for Indonesia as one of the tuna producers, for example, to play a much more big role on the tuna markets, for example. So yeah, I agree that it will be rearrange the targets and also rearrange the strategies due to the pandemic. Thank you, Professor Steve.
Thanks, Alexander. Antonis, is there any insight from the Cypriot situation with respect to blue economy and COVID-19?
Well, obviously, the pandemic has affected all areas of our lives. But in that respect, from our perspective, and in relation to implementing a good governance model, we should know that the pandemic has given rise to opportunities as well, opportunities that we might not have in relation to time, for example, because the pandemic has given us a lot of time to think and a lot of time to envision new policies. And based on the fact that policies are not a snapshot of a specific moment, I think that the period of the pandemic, the lockdowns, but the use of digitalized and digitalization as well, new technologies, I think have helped in one way or another to gain some ground in envisioning new policies.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? It's kind of, there's been some breathing space, I suppose, to reflect on how we do things. Patricia, does that breathing space extend to the sorts of issues that you were describing in your presentation, or are they just as problematic as ever in a post-COVID world, or COVID world maybe?
Well, I'm just speaking for our local fishery here. A lot of the local longliners, they fish for fresh chilled tuna. And so because the air freight, because they're usually air freighted to like markets in New Zealand, Australia, US, and so on, well, the air freight charges were very, very high. And so a lot of this was tied up because they couldn't get price for their fish. The freight was, a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of the men that we know that work on the vessels, you know, they were in a bad way. Some vessels freeze their fish, so they kept on going, and because they had frozen tuna, they could put them on vessels and ship them off to markets. That's all I can say in that way. Is that all right?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I wonder if I could just move us away a little bit from COVID-19, but keep us on the topic of transition, and particularly how we can transition an ocean economy to a more sustainable footing, or to a blue economy. And Antonis, there was something you said that really struck me. You talked about where is it? Good maritime governance being a process, not an outcome, or not a form in some way. And I think I agree with that. But I was wondering how the process of good maritime governance can then deliver the outcome of a blue economy, or a sustainable blue economy, or is a blue economy a process too? It'd be great just to kind of unpick some of those things, if that's okay.
I think blue economy, it's a process itself, and it's a process because it includes the flow of information, for example, materials, things that have to do with the blue economy, the protection of the environment, sustainability, and so on. And all of those policies that derive from good governance, best practices, and so on, need to materialize, actually, need to become a fact that we will have in front of us and ahead of us. And this is why we said we need to think ahead, think across, and also think outside the box in order to implement and actually materialize those visions and those policies into real actions.
Yeah, thank you. Patricia or Alexander, do you want to come in on this question? Alexander, you're nodding. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. So from my perspective, blue economy is a tool that is an option that can be chosen rather by the governments and by the global community. Even though sometimes some governments do struggle with other issues rather than blue economy. So I think it's an options that will bring the nation to sustain their existence. So yeah, that's all I can say, Professor Steve.
All right. Oh, Patricia, please go ahead.
Just make a comment. I got my head together. The Pacific tuna fishery is like a train that's bolted. It's going to go whether there's a blue economy or a not a blue economy, because it's money that drives the whole system. It's based on the money, and that's why it's so hard to almost these like the Western Central Pacific Fisheries Commission and everything, almost become subservient to the fishing companies because they're the ones with the money and they access the nations, like small nations like Tuvalu, Kiribati and some others, they depend so much on the money from the licensings that they'll just put up with almost anything. So I could branch off, but that's not attending what I want to say. And that is that the blue economy is almost peripheral to the Pacific tuna fishery. Unfortunately, it'll just go until there's no more tuna.
Yeah.
Alexander, you're nodding. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with Patricia that not the money who drive the system, but the market demands, and the market goes to the developed country, right? So should be a link and match between the developed countries and the producing countries. So it will be fair playing between the developed and the developing countries. That's my side, Steve.
Thank you. Antonis, anything to add to that?
I think I'm covered by the two other presenters.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. So a question that springs to mind from Patricia's comment and Alexander's reply is kind of what's the point of having a policy framework then that supports a sustainable outcome or process of a blue economy if there are market forces that are so strong that they override the very thing that the blue economy is trying to generate, this ecologically sustainable yet economically viable ocean economy? I mean, what is the barrier is to that transition? Is the barrier the economic dependence on fisheries? Patricia, go ahead.
Yes, it's that, especially for these small island states. So all they have is they have white beaches, coconuts, all those things. Few tourists go to many of them because of air, travel things. So there, but more particularly, I think that they'll start to be looking at the blue economy constrictors and so on when there's not as many fish in the sea. And then they'll have to start to moderate their behavior. And they might have, I think that might be the best when there's less tuna.
Okay, Alexander, any comments on that?
Prof. Steve, from my previous research on the tuna fisheries in eastern Indonesia, might be the problem should be similar with what happened in Pacific island countries, Patricia. So most of the benefits goes to the big companies rather than to the small scale fishers. So, for example, certifications for the tuna markets required by the developed countries like EU, America, UK, and Australia goes to the big company who provide supply for the tuna from the small scale, but the impact is not directly achieved by the small scale. This is the blue economy should be play the role, to play their games, how to distribute the benefits from the global market to the local small scale fishers. And also at the same time, as we may aware that Indonesia consists of 90% of the fisheries came from the small scale fisheries. So it is like a what we call it opportunity to increase the small scale and scale up their capacity through the blue economy perspective.
Yes, I just might add the Pacific fishery is mainly industrial. It's very, very small, small as alias in Samoa. There's not much else. There's pole and line fishing in Solomon Islands, but everything else is very, very heavily industrial fishing.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pause the discussion there, actually, because I think, Antonis, you need to leave us in a moment. So I just would like to invite you just to make any final comments or reflections based on the discussion so far, and then we'll continue the discussion and the Q&A with Alexandra and Patricia and myself. So Antonis, over to you, please.
Thank you, Professor. Unfortunately, something came up. I'm at the port of Limassol, and something came up, and I have to deal with it. So it was a great opportunity for us to meet in this virtual environment and discuss those very important topics. I think all of mankind's activities are seeking location in time and in place, and this extends also to policy making, and especially in the maritime sector, and for all relevant aspects to issues of blue economy. And the state we have arrived today in relation to fulfilling our vision for the blue economy should not be deemed to be the final stage, but I think that's the beginning, actually, of new visions and new areas of interest in relation to the maritime environment. So thank you very much, and apologies for having to leave earlier.
No worries. Thank you so much for your presentation, Antonis, and your wheel analogy will stay with me for quite some time, I think. And thank you for your closing words as well. Thank you so much. Okay, so just to go back to our discussion on tuna, Patricia, I don't know if you noticed, a question came into the question box. Is there a new decree for fishing of tuna in the Pacific? I guess the broader question is, are there any new legal arrangements that might control some of the issues around tuna fishing, that you were alluding to as a problem?
Not really. There's the port state management measures, which are also intended to limit, it's like control. So every state, every like Pacific Island country agrees to the port state management measures. They inspect the vessels as they come. So it means that the IUU vessels don't have anywhere to come in. But that's been there for a while, maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't know of any others, but if I can just, because they all have to come from the Commission, everything has to go to this big balloon in the sky, and it has to make the decisions, and it's based on consensus, as I said, and that's from their annual meetings. But I did notice myself and other, a question there about an environmentally nice fishing method, and actually Indonesia's got it down to a fine art, and that's pole and line fishing, which pole and line, it used to be very common in the Pacific, but before long lining came in, and then they discovered that they could get many more fish from a long line than you can from a pole and line. But of course, as Alex knows, with the long line, you get a lot of bycatch, like shark and other fish. But with pole and line fishing, it's what we call a target fishery. So you only catch what you're targeting to catch. And you don't get any bycatch. Other good things, so it's environmentally useful. There's some little complaints sometimes about
I think Patricia is frozen for me. I'm not sure about everybody. Yeah, she has. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm facing too. I cannot hear Patricia.
Okay. Oh, she's gone entirely now. Oh, no. Okay. Let's wait for her to come back to continue that. But Alex, is there anything else you wanted to say about governance around tuna or fisheries in the Pacific before we move on a bit?
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. That Indonesia part of the member of the Western Central Pacific Tuna Commission. So Indonesia has also a member of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission. So right now Indonesia have a good management on the tuna fisheries. One of the tuna pole and line has already been certified by the MSC in the eastern Indonesia. So yeah, we moving forward to get our tuna fishery more certified. Even though I agree with Patricia. You will. Welcome back, Patricia. Terima kasih. Yeah, that's all right. So yeah, I think as a member of the IOTC, Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, and the Western Central Pacific Tuna Commission, Indonesia has a good relationship on manage their tuna resources. Even though right now Indonesia trying to get more certified for the sustainable fishing methods. In the eastern Indonesia, we already has our MSC certified for the pole and line tuna fisheries. So we're moving forward to sustainable way on fishing methods. Steve.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for that. Patricia, you cut out for us shortly after you started your last answer, so I'm afraid we didn't catch any of that.
I
would you mind just
any of it.
I'm sure it was amazing as well.
No, I was just talking about pole and line, and I'm sure Alex and I are singing the same song.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the I think a lot of island nations in the Pacific would actually like to do pole and line for employment issues and for the resource and the environment and things like that. But you've got this competing issue about getting access and money coming in, flowing in for the big vessels to come and access. It's throwing balls up in the air, and I don't envy people. But the Solomon Islands have got, I think, maybe 3 or 5 vessels, pole and line, and they have processing plants there. And the other thing about pole and line tuna is, I believe Alex probably knows much better than I, is that I think it's a fairly good condition when it's caught, even though they thump on the desk, on the deck and so on. So it's a pretty good thing. Some of us in Fiji, we're thinking about it with support from a British company, do some exploratory things. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. If it's okay with the two of you, can we just move on a little bit from fisheries and fishing and just think a little bit more about the idea of good maritime governance and its contribution to the sustainable blue economy, perhaps a little bit more generally. So in one of the presentations, and I think it either was yours, Alex, or Antonis's, we talked a lot about, or one of you, oh no, I should know this, one of you spoke a lot about the need for integrated policy and harmonizing the way different organizations work together. And I know, Alex, there's a question about this in the chat box that you answered in writing a little bit, but there seems to me to be a fundamental question, which is, how do you get organizations with different objectives, different priorities, and different pressures to work together around a shared outcome or a shared agenda? Because that's really difficult, but it's also at the heart of what the transition to a blue economy is. And so, Alex, if I perhaps come to you first, I mean, how do we do that? What advice can you give a country on how to achieve that kind of integration or coordination?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. And I think that that is why Indonesia has a coordinating ministry. So we coordinate each ministry under the same topics or issue or same targets or policy. For instance, Indonesia has a coordinating ministry for maritime and investment. So every ministry who work on marine issues and investments should be coordinated under this ministry. So reflect to that, not only based on we have to perform a new ministry just like in Indonesia, but also the most important thing is the political leaders. The political leaders it playing a big or a main impact to harmonizing each organization. For me, I think the political leader should take a role in leading and harmonizing each institution. That's from my side, Steve.
So, Alex, can I just follow up? And I appreciate these are difficult questions, so I'm sorry to push on this. So what if I can understand how that might work within a government, because the political leadership is, if it exists, can pull different ministries or agencies together, hopefully in some way that promotes coordination or harmonization. What about when you've got lots of private sector organizations as well? You've also got community groups and the public have a role to play here as well. How do you then what's the question? What mechanisms exist to try and coordinate outside of governments?
Right, that's also a difficult question for me. Thank you very much. So right, so from my experience interviewing, discussion with fishermen and fishers, and also different private sectors. What brings them together is money, right? That brings them in hand doing something in same direction. Is Patricia said before, money. From my point of view, market. So the market will bring them together hand in hand to achieve the market demand. So I think the co-management will be a good solution for different private sectors targets, different community group targets. So the co-management, and that's all driven by the market demand. So the link between them is how to the small scale, the private sector, the community group fill in the market demands, and NGOs and other platform like archipelagic and inter island state forum can be the bridge to hold that link and match position. That's from my point of view, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's a challenging question. Patricia, do you have anything you want to feed into that?
Well, I agree with Alex. Markets are very important, but I'd also say that in the Pacific, a lot of people, like in Suva, for example, a lot of people have no idea about the fishery. They have no idea. There's the vessels come into the wharf and so on. The only ones, obviously, who know about it are the fishermen and the companies and so on, like that. So it's like something over there, even though it's in public view. So I think, so the public doesn't have much engagement, but I think education is very important. It's not necessarily with the public. I think the education and awareness actually has to go with the companies.
Yeah.
The companies, so to, for example, you know, like we have a lot of trouble here. Our group and another group, we work hard with the men to try and get them certified, just to get their C certificates. And they're really happy to do it. So we get them the funding from a British company. It's helped us. But even then, we find that the maritime authorities actually don't even bother checking the certificates. And, you know, when you think about it, if you've got a certificate as a seafarer, you actually like that. And so you'll work better on a vessel.
Yeah.
And so the atmosphere on a vessel is better and so on. And so it needs this, this is just me talking, by the way. I have a feeling that if people started to, instead of like sectioning people off, saying, oh, he's just a deckhand and I'm a captain and this is our vessels and so on like that, you actually started to work together as the whole under the ambit of the commission and so on, things might get a little better. But I still go back to when the fish start to run out, because you need to have an impetus to get that going. Like at the moment, if we started going along trying to get everyone to be all happily talking to each other, but once there's a danger of losing the resource and so on, people will be grasping to look at other ways to maintain their income. Or because these fishing vessels are like millions of dollars. They've got loans from the banks and all of that. They just, yeah. So I think those sorts of things might work. But as I said to you and Alex, it's all off the top of my head, and I hope I'm not going to be pilloried after this.
I doubt it very much, but I hope not, for your sake. Yeah, so I mean that's really interesting, isn't it? Because this idea of coordination and integration, and what drives it is almost at the heart of the debate for the last sort of 30 years on, you know, coastal zone management and marine spatial planning, and now blue economy and sustainable blue economy transitions. And the problem remains the same, which is how do you bring the sectors together in such a way that they work cohesively to generate some kind of shared outcome? And the shared outcome in this case is a sustainable ocean economy that supports ecosystems and supports people's well-being, be it on land or on fishing boats or anywhere in between. And just to share something from my own work, so I mentioned that at the beginning, I'm working with the UN Environment Programme on a transition program that might help countries move towards what they call a sustainable blue economy. And in broad terms, it has three stages. The first stage is to identify where a country is at the moment. So what are its resource use patterns? What are its resource challenges? What are the institutions, the legal structures, all those sorts of things? Almost a stock take of the current governance arrangements. Then the second phase, and this is where some of the integration might come in, the second phase is to pull together all of the ministries, all of the private sector bodies, all of the civil society organizations to together develop an ambition or to develop a vision for what a sustainable blue economy might look like. So there's support and buy-in from everybody at the beginning. And then we look at, well, if that's the vision, what needs to change in the current maritime governance arrangement? So do we need a new institution like your coordinating ministry, Alex? That sounds like a great idea. You know, what institutions might need to change, what laws might need to change, what data might need to be collected, all that sort of thing. And then basically develop a strategy to move from where a country is to where it wants to be, and, you know, figure out what all the changes are. And once we've got that blue economy transition strategy, then to implement that, and that could take 20 years, of course, but that is a long-term transitional process. But it's that middle phase is the important point, really, that middle phase where all of the different stakeholders and interested parties, be them public, private, or civil, come together to develop some kind of shared agenda. And of course, it doesn't guarantee success, for all the reasons that Alex and Patricia have talked about, but at least it's a process. And there's an interesting question around who should perform that role, who should be that bridging organization between those sectors. And sometimes it helps if it's an external body, perhaps, to come in and have that kind of neutral facilitating role. And I guess that in due course is where bodies like the AIS might come in and play that enabling and facilitating role. So yeah, it's an extremely tricky question. This question of integration. Just before I move on, do either of you have any sort of immediate responses or feedback to what I just said? Then, just so that we can close that bit of the debate off.
Yeah, if I may say, I think that's quite excellent. We have had very preliminary forays into like getting the fishing industry people to come and have we call it here in Fiji a talanoa, which is a discussion. And they've come, but you're skirting around the margins. But I suppose that's the start. And I agree with you. You need a facilitator to come in. Maybe that's something we can look at. And but things are a bit dodgy sometimes in our country. Anyway.
Thanks, Patricia. Alex, any comments on that?
No, I'm agree more than with Patricia. It's kind of dodgy but challenging at the same time.
Boy, I couldn't say it's a bit dodgy in Fiji.
It's too late now.
Too late.
It is recorded, no worries.
Yeah.
Just wipe that one out.
Okay. So we are coming towards the end of the discussion. So I'm just going to try and pick up a few questions that we can answer really quickly, if that's okay. The questions are quite big. There's a question for you, particularly, Patricia. What are some of the major issues stopping Pacific Island countries to gain much from the blue economy? Gosh, is there anything you just want to, like a 1-minute answer to that massive question?
No, I think we've gone through all of that already. There's a lot of, I think one of the issues, unfortunately, in a lot of the smaller countries is the lack of underskilling of people. That might be something. Can you just drop it down? There's a lot of the personnel and something often, these are issues that have to be addressed, but maybe it has to come from the universities and so on, because I think a lot of people in departments and businesses, they're working at a different level to, I'm not quite sure. I think some of the issues here with the tuna fisheries are just fixed in concrete, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Patricia. So I heard somebody say something the other day that nothing changes until it does. So I think there's probably a point at which some of those concrete issues might begin to change through some of the processes that we've been talking about today. I've just noticed another question, actually, which is directed at me, but I'm just going to redirect it to you, Alex, if that's okay, which is what about roles for non-governmental organizations to take more responsibility? And the question is focused around illegal fishing, but actually it could be about anything, right? In terms of, not just relying on governments, but bringing in civil organizations to have a more formalized role. Is that something you've seen in Indonesia, or you could imagine how that might work?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Based on experience in Indonesia, if you notice that the non-government organization like WWF and other NGOs, non-government organization to help the community in many ways, like capacity building, share knowledge, share experience, and to raise and to increase the local capacity on resources management, on bookkeeping, for example, and on organize themselves into an organization. So that's the role of non-government organization, to advocate and to help local community being more capable into organized society. That's the lesson learned from Indonesia. It is still part of Indonesia. Like, for example, WWF has a big project to improve local capacity by sharing their knowledge, sharing their experience on how to perform a local community into a group, which is organized group with excellent bookkeeping, with excellent management of organizations, small organization management. So I think that's the role of non-government organization, how to not to educate, but to share their knowledge, to share their experience to the local community, become more well prepared and well organized. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably how I would have answered that question as well. And building capacity, providing research, input, perhaps not knowledge sharing, those sorts of things. But as for taking a formal role, that's quite difficult in a legal sense. But certainly in terms of good maritime governance is a critical role that the civil society can play, and NGOs and so on. Okay, I'm just conscious we've got a very small amount of time left, so I'm just going to ask Patricia and Alex if you have any final reflections or any key messages that you really want to communicate to the audience based on what we've been saying. And if I could just kind of encourage you to think, the whole purpose of this event was around how do we connect good maritime governance with the development of the blue economy in sort of AIS kind of places. Are there anything you'd like to say? Just if you could keep your comments fairly brief. Any final thoughts or comments? Who'd like to go first?
Patricia, go first, please.
Oh, I was going to nominate Alex.
Well, Patricia, would you like to go first? And then if you then have something else to say after Alex, then I'll just bring you in again. Yeah.
Well, as I tried to demonstrate in my presentation, the Pacific Convention Area fishery, the tuna fishery, is very well governed. There's a lot of organizations that work in it, and I didn't mention the number of NGOs like the Pew Foundation and the Sustainable Fishing Foundation, ISSF, and all sorts of people who are involved with it. I think their mandate is to try and make the fishery accountable to the people. But I think there's pluses and minuses, like the commission they make decisions based on consensus. So if one of the 27 members just says no, the whole motion fails. So some people say, well, what's the use of having a commission? But other people say, well, at least you get people together, which actually goes back to what you were saying, Steve. They get people together, and as you can imagine, there's lots of discussions going on. So that helps. But I'm not sure about the link to the blue economy. I still keep going back to when the last fish.
Yep. Okay.
Not many fish.
Yep. Well.
Okay, Alex, it's your turn.
Point, I think. Actually.
Terima kasih. Yeah, thank you, Prof. Steve. So as I mentioned before on my presentation, that this these targets and strategies, frameworks from different institutions, so globally and national, and in Indonesia, for example, should be harmonizing to achieve the targets and by the concerned organization. And also we should also take a big respect to the local values that will bring color to the blue economy implementations. So don't forget the local values, local people, local wisdom from local different people in different area. So it will bring more colorful to the blue economy implementations. Back to you, Steve.
Hey, Alex, I can see that you had time to think.
You notice it.
Well,
Oh, actually, that's a very good point to bring it back to the local mores. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you both for agreeing on that final point about the importance of communities, and I would entirely support that comment as well. And it's the group, in some ways it's easy to forget sometimes when we talk about national scale transitions, to really think about, well, what do local people want, what do communities want, what would serve them to be more healthy and wealthy, and all that. And the points that Patricia brought up in her presentation are very important to reflect upon, I think, in that context. How do we generate benefits socially and for people's well-being, as well as for nature and for ocean ecosystems as well. And that's a tricky balance, of course. So at this point, I'd like to bring the event to a close. I would like to formally extend my great thanks, actually, to Alex, Patricia, and Antonis. I do a lot of this chairing, but rarely do I hear such an accomplished set of 3 presentations. So honestly, thank you so much. You should be really proud of the work you're doing. It's really progressive, and I hope it's really making a difference in your respective fields. So thank you so much for that. Thank you to the AS Forum Secretariat for putting the event on. It's been really nicely handled, really nicely set up and produced. So thank you so much for that too. But principally, could I thank the audience, as without you, there isn't much point for great questions, for your attention, and for, I guess, helping us think through some of the challenging questions around good maritime governance and the development of the blue economy. And I think at that point, I will leave it there. So thank you, everybody. Have a good day, and take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, Professor Steve. Thank you, Professor Patricia.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Dadah.
The Archipelagic and Island States Forum is a platform designed to facilitate 47 archipelagic and island nations to collaborate and cooperate in addressing common challenges in 4 thematic areas: climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastic debris, and good maritime governance. In 2017, the idea to establish the multinational cooperation framework among the archipelagic and island states was first iterated during the UN Ocean Conference in New York. In November 2018, Indonesia hosted the first ministerial meeting with 21 archipelagic and island states. The Archipelagic and Island States Forum was established by Manado Joint Declaration. In the following year, the second ministerial meeting adopted the final outcome with 25 AIS participating countries. To achieve our vision, we focus on 4 objectives which we translate into our programs. Create an open, innovative, and engaging forum. Provide a space to share and implement innovative and tangible programs. Promote collaborative efforts among stakeholders. And create opportunity through the blue economy. Ideation, implementation, and evaluation are the core elements to our solution framework in addressing the problems. In 2020, AIS Forum launched programs to drive innovation, which are AIS Joint Research, a collaborative applied research program affiliated with academic institution in AIS countries with various topics related to the 4 areas of collaboration: the Innovator Scholarship Program, a fully funded exchange program for talented individuals from AIS participating countries who can demonstrate exceptional leadership quality and creative mind, and AIS Innovation Challenge to find innovative ideas and breakthroughs that can help societies and businesses to be more resilient and adaptive during crisis situations. AIS Forum also launched AIS Blue Startup Hub, a platform to connect marine-focused startup in 47 archipelagic and island states across the globe. AIS Blue Startup Hub Mentoring Program was launched with 18 participating startups from 6 countries. As an effort to realize the smart, innovative solutions, AIS Forum also engaged with public audiences through online events in a form of trainings, workshops, talk shows, and discussions with various topics and stakeholders across AIS participating countries. In light of COVID-19 pandemic, it is important for archipelagic and island states to have a resilient economy. Therefore, AIS Forum Secretariat introduces programs which focuses on blue economy. As a form of its commitment, AIS Forum developed Blue Economy Development Index, or BEDI. This index will be used as a tracking tool to determine the current use of coastal and marine resources, and it can be used as a tool to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. Blue Financing Framework, or BFF, which provides a guidance for governments, financial institutions, philanthropists, and donors to align their investments with the blue economy principles and allow them to select a project to be financed in the blue economy sectors. Smart and innovative solution programs, such as sharing knowledge sessions with experts and representatives from AIS participating countries. Plankton, which was a competition to raise awareness in reducing marine plastic debris. Impact pitching, which connects startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, potential investors, and growth enablers to gain partnership. And Ending Plastic Pollution Innovation Challenge, which was a collaboration with Marine Plastic Debris Project from UNDP Indonesia to address marine plastic pollution in Southeast Asia. Many solutions to challenges that affect AIS participating countries in 4 main thematic areas and SDG 14 goals are produced through collaboration programs. These programs will explore opportunities through innovation and experiment that benefits on a local, regional, and international scale through sharing knowledge and experiences between AIS participating countries.